Hello and welcome to Dojo Live this Tuesday, May 16th, 2023. I'm Kim Lantis and joining me as co-host is America Guerrero. Hey, America.
Hello, sorry for the dogs barking out there. It's crazy.
It's
Hello,
all
William.
right. It's
Nice
all
to
right.
meet you.
Part of a live show. And of course, the guest of honor today is Bill Santana Li, who is the chairman and CEO of Knightscope. Bill, thank you so much for joining us today on the show.
Greetings from Silicon Valley. Thanks for having us.
Yes. And I deeply ashamed myself confusing, Star Wars with Star Trek. I do apologize. We love your backdrop and it will never happen again. I'm going to have to start watching Mandalorian and everything right now.
You're going to have to apologize throughout the show.
Yeah.
Maybe by the end of the show, you might have made up for it, but
that is absolutely
we
right.
want views, Kim.
We want views. Yeah, not enemies. But talking about enemies, today's topic of conversation is actually not the enemy, but the friends, rise of the friendly robots. And before we get into the topic of conversation too deeply, though, however, we'd love to get to know your story, Bill. What's your passion and what's sort of led up to Knightscope?
First of all, there's no such thing as a friendly robot. They're all coming to kill everybody, take everyone's job. Did you not get the memo? Like, I don't know what you're talking about.
Of course.
All kidding aside. So by way of background, I spent a good amount of time in Detroit working and building on vehicles and automobiles around the world. Passions around autonomy, self-driving technology. And I think we just have a decidedly different approach to how to commercialize the technology. And we can get into that if you like. And then like I was born in New York City, someone hit my town on 9/11. I'm 2 decades later, still profoundly pissed off about it. So I decided to dedicate the rest of my life to better securing our country. And it was a bit surreal last month that the mayor of New York City and the entire NYPD brass arranged for a police escort of our Robot Roadshow pod into Manhattan and did a huge press conference. And we landed our first contract with my hometown, which 10 years in the making, but it was
Poetic justice.
surreal.
I love it.
Feels surreal.
I love it. That's fantastic. And it was one of my questions about exactly what fostered or this need for you to this passion about public safety, public security, and that makes perfect sense. So let's talk about how Knightscope is contributing to that. You already said the word robot. What is it that you're doing?
Yeah. So let's talk about the problem and the solution. I guess the problem is crime has a $2 trillion negative economic impact on the U.S. every single year.
That's a T.
Crime with T. That's crime and terrorism it's a hidden tax we all pay in blood, tears, and treasure. Just to put a little bit more of a point on it, a finer point, a violent crime occurs every 26 seconds in our country and a property crime every 4 seconds. I believe every citizen has the right to live in a safe community in a safe country. And I think for your audience's benefit, like, people don't realize that the country, the government, as much as I love our country, is not set up to fix the problem. So if you look over on the military side of things, it's expensive, it's slow, but it works rather well. There's one person in charge, the Secretary of Defense. There's 2+ million troops, an $800 billion budget every year, and we give the soldiers
which is almost a T.
Yeah. And we give the soldiers almost every capability you could ever imagine. And there's a Lockheed Martin, a Northrop Grumman, a Raytheon, a Boeing to build whatever a human may need in a theater of war outside of our borders. What the fundamental crux of the problem is that the Department of Justice and the Department of Homeland Security have no federal jurisdiction over the 19,000 law enforcement agencies in our country and 8,000 private security firms. There's literally,
which actually sounds like not a big number. I mean, it is a big number, but when you think of the scope of the size of our nation, the quantity of people,
there's no one in charge, Kim. That's the problem. Like, the Secretary of Defense is in charge as one person, right? Someone shoots up a school, shoots up a synagogue or a mall or what have you, like who gets fired? Nobody. There's nobody accountable. And the problem is that there's no innovation process. There's no risk capital. There's no one sitting around like at DARPA or the DoD thinking about like what's the new weapon system we can build, what is the new most efficient way to handle logistics and all that. We don't have that. So
It's almost the opposite.
Yeah, literally, you have 1.5 million officers and 1 million security guards running around with the equivalent of a number 2 pencil and a notepad, and then we're wondering why it doesn't work. And then there's the math problem, Kim. It's like, okay, so there's 2.5 million people, but they're running 24/7. Like you can't triple shift a human, so you got to divide by 4. So there's only 600,000 humans trying to secure 332 million Americans across 50 states. And then we wonder why it's not working. It's like, I'm sorry, it's not popular to say, but we don't have enough officers and guards or tools for the population that we have.
That's like 1 to like 650 ratio or something like that.
It doesn't work, right?
Yeah.
And we've got all the proof to showcase it. So what's the solution? In my mind, we need to go put 1 million security robots and public safety robots out there to help the 1 million officers and the 1.5 million officers and the 1 million guards. But you need to get those robots to be able to see, feel, hear, smell, and speak, right? Do 100 times more than a human can do. And those robots actually can be triple shifted. They can run 24/7. So if you have 1 million of them running 24/7 and you have 600,000 humans that have now gotten promoted and have superhuman capabilities at their fingertips to do their jobs more effectively, all of a sudden they can have eyes, ears, and voice on the ground in multiple locations at the same time. The likelihood that we can put a huge dent in the problem rises significantly.
It certainly does. And I think there's a couple of things here that are happening in the word of the friendly robot, right? I think it's very common nowadays when we think of AI or robotics or automation that it feels like something's getting taken from us, right? What about my job? What about the security guards? What's going to happen to those 600,000? And what you said here is they're not being replaced. They're being amplified.
They're not enough. They're just not enough in the first place. And if you don't believe me that the robots can actually do some positive impact on society, we're just getting started. But if you go to knightscope.com/crime, there's a nice long list of all the positive things these machines have already done to help society become a safer place.
Something that I remember from our last show is that you said that also the turnover with security guards, it's higher, right? That is also another factor.
So yeah, in the security industry, it's a really tough industry. That those million folks that I spoke of, there's 100% to 400% employee turnover rates. So you hire a guard, there's a reasonable chance that in 90 days he or she is gone. Why? No tools to do the job, not paid appropriately for what they think they should
high
earn.
Personal risk.
The level of personal risk. And oh, by the way, I believe it's in 17 states. It's illegal for a guard to put their hands on you. So their job is contractually and from a regulatory standpoint in a lot of cases are to observe and report only. They are not to, put their hands on you or intercede or anything like that. So there's all kinds of liability issues, etc. And, what if we can promote that guard? What if she had, 7 robots reporting to her with an app and, oh, wow, now I can actually do my job. Then the likelihood that person stays in that job is a lot higher. But, one of the reasons we're doing really well, for example, in casinos and healthcare and the like, is there's not enough people applying for the jobs. So they can't fill the position. It's kind of like it's not discretionary. So, it becomes a very interesting intersection of, okay, the old way is not working. Here's a new way. It's been proven to work. Probably time to try it.
For sure. Let's talk about this change. I mean, the topic of conversation today is the rise of the friendly robots, how security robots are changing the landscape of public safety. So here, right now, I'm not an expert in this, but we're all familiar with cameras and security rooms and recordings and guarding patrol. What's changing then? You mentioned these robots having the capability of several senses, right? Sights, being able to see, hear, feel,
Smell.
smell, and speak.
speak.
Pretty much all of it, right?
Yep.
So how is this shifting? What changes? How is this any different than somebody having a security camera and watching that in a room?
So if all the security cameras are so effective and there's 70 million in the US, then why do we have all these problems?
Because
Because they're
people
not
suck.
effective. Maybe they don't necessarily work if they're not on. I mean, this is annoying, but a lot of cases they're not on. You ever seen that really grainy video of something getting stolen? Like, hey, what happened? I don't know. I think somebody came in and I got a really perfect good shot of the top of their head. Like, that's not really helpful. But if you can get live streaming recorded video at eye level, and then be able to do facial recognition. You can do, read several hundred license plates a minute. You can speak through the machine. And I think the less obvious one for folks that are not in law enforcement or security is just a physical presence can stop a lot of nonsense from happening. Like, why do you put a yard sign outside that says, out of your home, that says this is secured by? Or why are there blue light poles on campuses?
Heck,
Why
I've
do
even heard
you
of people hanging up "Beware of dog" signs, and they don't even own a dog.
exactly right? Or why do you put a law enforcement vehicle at an intersection and there's no officer in it?
Or a cardboard one. They literally use cardboard ones.
If I put a marked law enforcement vehicle in front of your home or your office, criminal behavior will change. You pull up into a parking lot at 3 a.m. and there's a 5-foot tall, 400-pound machine roaming around on its own. There's nobody remote controlling it. The strobe light's going. It says police or security on the side. It may say something to you. There's a sound, a patrol sound that goes with it. You have no idea what it does. Like, you're going to think twice about stealing that car. One of our clients just renewed their contract for the 7th year. And what they were experiencing when they contacted us nearly a decade ago was, we're a hospital. We have, assault, stolen vehicle, theft at least twice a week here. Now the security guard doesn't want to even patrol. Can you help? Can you give us a shot and see if, it can be a good, deterrent? And obviously, we've proven that that's helped a great deal. And, we've had clients where, 10 stolen cars a month and now 0 stolen cars a month. What's changed? Well, we put the security robot there. So, it's a lot has changed, Kim, from cameras that may or may not be able to give you historical information to having a physical deterrence that can give you live information, can detect, can run a thermal scan, can read the license plate, can detect a person. And, that's just the beginning. And over time, what I'm getting at is we need these machines to be able to do 100 times more than that.
In terms of criminal behavior, how has been changing? I mean, with the pandemic, there was no people out there in the streets, and now that we're going back to normal, how is changing?
I think, in general, we have a lot of verticals where we operate. It could be commercial real estate, it could be hospitals. I think one comes to mind is retail. In a lot of cases, you see that it used to be, if you're a retailer and you had a high priced item for, I don't know, $1,000, $500, those would get locked up and you'd have to call the salesperson to, like, can you unlock this to get the device that I want? And what's happened now is, because of shortage of law enforcement and security and budgets and the like, a lot of the criminals have been starting to organize. And instead of going after the high priced items, they're going after the unsecured, low priced items at volume, like going and taking a bunch of $50 items instead of trying to take one $500 item. And, I think the shrink levels or theft. Either the employee took it, or the patron took it, or the vendor took it. It used to be low single digits, maybe, I don't know, 1-2% of revenue. I've spoken to some prospective clients or existing clients where, it's 4%, 5%, 6%, 8% of revenue, not a profit, like literally everything going out the door. And you've seen in a lot of cities where things have gotten pretty rough, retailers literally just closing their doors and like, we can't operate here. I don't believe that's the society we all want to live in.
It's not. One of the things that came up, Knightscope was first on dojolive almost 3 years ago. And I remember we touched on a two-part strategy. You have a two-part strategy, one of which you've already touched on, and that's the physical presence being a deterrent. The second piece of the puzzle, and I don't know if this has changed since, is this idea that data is power. It doesn't take, you'd be living under a rock if you haven't been able to see how much just artificial intelligence, machine learning, and everything has shifted even in these past, 2-3 years. So what's this data is power component? What's changed for you? What are you able to accomplish with the data you have and are obtaining?
Well, not all data is the same. So our machines generate over 90 terabytes of data a year. Some of it's useful for security purposes, right? So we had a domestic dispute end up in the workplace, and we were able to help a domestic violence case by having certain data that others wouldn't have. But one thing I find fascinating is this whole AI is gaining a lot of traction. There's a lot of exciting things in there. And I've had people turn to us and like, so what's Knightscope going to do about AI? And I'm like, excuse me? Like, how do you think we operate across the country 24/7 for over 2 million hours with no one remote controlling the machines? Like, these autonomous.
Like, if you're looking for the definition of AI, like,
this is
golden
like literally in the real world operating. These machines decide when to go charge themselves on their own. These machines, how can you read a license plate at 4 o'clock in the morning when it's raining and foggy and dark out and you got a weird angle? Like, that's literally the practice of machine learning. So we've been actually utilizing this, and that's how we operate. And we're excited that other folks are getting on the bandwagon, but that's kind of how we operate.
That's fantastic. So, like, with this data, you have the public safety component, which I think your primary focus is prevention. But there's also this piece that your data is able to bring you to, and that's a justice component in terms of if a crime does take place, you have data and information that can help catch the perpetrators.
Yep. And also sometimes disintermediate the escalation of an issue. We have one law enforcement agency that's a client of ours who's, patrolling a very large park in their city. They don't have a spare 8 officers to be patrolling that 24/7. And sometimes officers always, have a good intent, but sometimes showing up a uniformed officer armed can escalate a situation. And if you can de-escalate things by having an intermediary in there, can help. And I think we've seen that. But yeah, having a significant amount of evidence. I remember one district attorney was basically, he's like, we've never seen this level of data to prosecute a criminal, and I think we got him for 3 felonies or something like that. So it's the evidence has been admissible in court. And people are starting to realize, like, okay, there's some new tools here for us to be able to operate much more efficiently.
Fantastic. What about the speaking component? Is that a relatively new addition to Knightscope? What does that look like in terms of interaction? Who's speaking? Is it the robot itself or someone via the robot?
So there's a few phases here. I think the first phase is just pre-recorded broadcasts. Like welcome to such and such location, or the mall is closing in 30 minutes, or it's 2:22 in the morning, you're trespassing, I'm calling the authorities. That's kind of the pre-recorded broadcast, and we can tailor that for whatever the client might need. The second one is there's a distress button on the machine that you can press, and you can have a two-way human-to-human call with whoever's sitting in the security operations center or 911 dispatch. There's a third component, which is text to speech. So the guard or officer can type whatever they want and have the machine announce it. And then what we're waiting for, and I think we probably need something better than 5G. Maybe it's 6G cellular or private LTE combined with the GPT 5, 6, or 7, and then have the machine be able to hold a proper dialogue with someone. The problem right now is the lag time is a little odd. Like it makes for a very awkward. It's technically doable, but the conversation is a little weird. Like you have to pause for 1, 2, 3 seconds waiting for the response. Like that's not how a human's going to accept that. But
Right.
Over time, that capability is certainly there.
So it's like speaking through a translator, basically, right?
Yeah.
You gotta interpret.
A little bit, yeah, a little bit. So you have to get the audio signal transferred into text. The text needs to go up to the cloud, get processed, come back down, and then spit back out. It takes too long.
So I can imagine that with this mailing part, it's going to be possible in the future. How do you say this in English? Fuga de gas, Kim?
I do not know.
You don't know? Like you are walking in the street and then you see the robot, but you also identify that there is this gas.
Like a fume?
Yeah.
Smelling for pathogens or anything like that. So it's not us, but there are folks working on it. It's been some time, but the concept of figuratively taking the nose off of a dog and putting it on a silicon chip, so that you can literally be able to interpret the pathogens, the risks that might be in the air. So obviously, as soon as that's commercially available and viable, we certainly would have great interest in that.
Okay, and I see here what you have your main goal as public safety, but then also having your eyes open of how else can these robots continuously help making the space around them a better space, right, for people.
Yep. I mean, it's no different than I don't know. If you are a real estate developer in the US, would you be allowed to or even be interested in building a building without a fire alarm or a smoke alarm? It would be kind of a dumb conversation. You want to do what? And at some point, there's a tipping point for the robots. It's you didn't want to pay the $7 an hour to properly secure your facility. You're actually negligent and reckless, right? At some point, it becomes just you're dumb for not doing this. And as I often say, a lot of CEOs, a lot of health administrators, school principals, mayors, community leaders all say, the most important thing in our organization, it's our people. Our people are the most important thing. Okay. Hey, buddy, why is it that you're not using the most advanced security technologies in the world to better secure your people and the places that people visit, live, work, and study, right? At some point, it becomes a very awkward conversation. If your people are that important, why aren't you investing in properly securing them? And that, I think, for the next years to come is going to continue to be the conversation until we can get people to understand that you can't continue to do policing and security as we are doing it now. It is broken. It is not working. It is costly, and it's costing society and our organizations trillions of dollars by not fixing this problem.
Yeah. And I mean, you can even take that out. I mean, when you say trillions of dollars, my interpretation is that you're speaking mostly of physical property, right? Like theft or damage. But does that also roll out into healthcare if you're victimized and mental health care?
How much do the handcuffs cost? How much did the ambulance cost? How much does the judge's time cost? How much do the lawyers cost? How much, you start adding up how many prisons do you really need to have? Like, you add up all these costs that you could have been taking that money and dumping it somewhere else. Like, hey, how about paying our teachers appropriately? How about building, like having school supplies? Like, let's fast forward a different way. What if we just fast forward and say Knightscope and the US achieved its goal? We're the safest place on the planet. Now talk to me about a municipality's budget. Like, where is the municipality putting their money? Are we putting it in infrastructure, in education, in fine arts? Or are we dumping it on, let's go build some more prisons and hire some more? I mean, it's just the wrong trade-off.
And to your point, I mean, throughout this show, in my mind, I've been thinking people suck. This type of technology shouldn't even be necessary, right? I think that's this frustration that it brings up.
You've got it wrong. No. The robots suck. The robots are coming to kill everyone. The robots are going to take everyone's job. From where I sit, I worry about the humans. The humans are the ones that create this environment of, a violent crime every 4 seconds and
I mean, it's
property
interesting.
crime every 26 seconds.
Exactly. I mean, to your point, it's been a while. It's been over 20 years now since I've been on university campus, but I worked as a caterer throughout university. And that meant a lot of times I had to go start my job at 4 or 5 a.m. Not a lot of people walk around at 4 a.m. I would walk with my keys between my fingers because I don't know what's going to happen between my dorm room and the rec center, right? And so if there were a robot zipping around campus at all hours of the day, like that helps. And then to your point, I think going back to the root of the problem, people sucking. If we're then able to take whatever it is that we're saving and invest that into people probably suck a lot less. And
But go back to the founding of our country. Do you think our founders would have expected us to build a society where you, Kim, would have to do that? It's obnoxiously wrong. That is obnoxiously not the society that we should accept.
That's a whole nother conversation of how we went about founding the country, maybe.
But would they have been proud of where we ended up?
No.
Okay, well, let's do something about it, and we can stop arguing. This drives me crazy. Like, oh, we should do something. Yes, we should do something. Like, yes, we built it. Like, let's go deploy it.
Yeah, and I think that's absolutely fantastic. And we're coming to the final minutes of today's show, if you can believe it or not. What's crazy about this to me and what Knightscope is doing is this is real, right? You've used the word a couple times now in the show of commercialized. Like, it's out there, it's rolled out, they're functioning, they're working. This is no longer RoboCop from whatever year that was, 87, 88, 89, whatever. Like, it's happening. So what about, is there resistance? Are there speed bumps that you're having to get over? Are people's minds now shifting to like some dystopia, iRobot scenario? Like, what's next in this conversation?
I think, the rise of the robots is happening, and it's happening now. I think part of it, and I try to be as polite as possible, it's not like the law enforcement and security industries are the most technologically progressive in the world. So change is kind of hard. One. Two, we've been in operation for years and years and years, and people are like, cool prototype, when are you launching? Like, they don't realize that what they saw on the movie screen is in real life. And that's why we have this robot roadshow going across the country. If you go to knightscope.com/roadshow, there's this crazy pod with a bunch of robots in it that I call the robot aquarium, that people can come, touch, see, feel, have their questions answered, and start understanding that this is real and this is a real solution to a very real problem.
And it's scalable. You are scaling. You are able to have this reach that you'd like for, what did you say, $7 an hour?
Yeah, as low as 75 cents an hour up to $9 an hour. And, we just released now that we're publicly traded on NASDAQ, we're under ticker symbol KSCP. We just released our first quarter financials, and we're at a, $11 million annualized run rate. We did about 2.9, almost $3 million just during the first quarter. So we're generating millions of dollars of revenue. We've got clients all across the country, and from schools to hospitals to casinos to commercial real estate, and soon to be launching in New York City.
I
Nice.
love it. Good for you. Like I said, that's such poetic justice. It's beautiful. Congratulations.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
One last question. Yeah, this is related with what Kim asked. Is there more acceptance when you deploy these robots in big cities or on small towns, for example? What is the people
That's
reaction?
not the differentiator. The differentiator is etiquette. Just simply introducing yourself gets you much better acceptance. I'll give you a negative example. So we had one client some time ago who wanted to deploy the machine in a 350 home subdivision. Didn't want to tell the homeowners anything. Let's just put the machine there. And bad stuff happened, right? People assumed all the worst. And what ended up happening when we go, hey, let's do a lunch and learn. Come learn about the robots. Let's go do like we did in New York City. Let's go bring the Robot Roadshow into town for 3 days. Let people come, touch, see, feel, hear before the machine arrives. This is the problem. This is what it does. Then all of a sudden, like, people want to do robot selfies, kissing the robot, name the robot, and that sort of thing. So a lot of it has to do not with the location itself. It has to do how we conduct ourselves and how we communicate.
For sure. I mean, like you said, the rise of the robots, it is here. And this sense of awareness. And I also think transparency, right? I don't know what regulation looks like right now, but I think right now that transparency is the onus of each enterprise, of each company, to make sure that they're clearly explaining what is happening, what isn't happening, and also this willingness to listen to the users or the individuals who are being
Because
impacted.
part of it is, Hollywood had done us a service and disservice, and we kind of need to go out there and like, no, the lasers aren't here to shoot you. It's not reading your mind. I mean, it's like people have all kinds of conceptions, and you just have to kind of, be patient and explain, hey, this is what it does. Oh, can we get this at my school? Can we get this at my HOA? Or now that I understand how it works, it becomes a completely different conversation.
For sure. And I think it's just, as long as my nose is clean, what should I be worrying about, right? Is kind of how my philosophy in life. Like, I trust in myself, my own integrity, and that I'm doing things right. So I shouldn't have to be threatened, right, by a security robot.
And we're operating in public areas, right? We're not invading someone's home. We're not in the conference room. We're not in the restroom. We're not in the hotel room, right? These are in public areas. And if there is an officer or security guard there, are they, invading your privacy? No, they're trying to secure the location that, where you live, where you study, where you, visit, etc.
Exactly. Well, Bill, it has been fantastic learning from you, having you share your experience, your tech, and your company with us. Thank you so much for the time that you've spent with us today on Dojo Live.
Of course. And if anyone wants to learn a little bit more, just go to knightscope.com/rise, as in Rise of the Robots. And we shall see you on the other side.
All right. Looking forward to it. Stick around for just a minute as we go off air. But before we do, we'd like to remind our viewers that this is actually the only show we've got scheduled for this week. But we will have our recap show on Monday morning at 10 o'clock, as well as 2 other shows coming up next week. And that's going to be with Juvena Therapeutics, as well as Alithian. So catch that next week, Tuesday and Wednesday. All right. Thank you, Bill, once again. Everyone else, have a great rest of your week, and